Well, hello, everybody. Hopefully, everybody's hearing me by now. And Tony is with me. And Tony, what are we doing tonight? What's the plan?
Well, this will be Torah Talks with Tony and Bill. I'm Tony. That's Papa B. His name is Bill, but I call him Papa B. So we're going to have a really beautiful discussion because of the beauty of the season that we're in, and we're hoping that they're able to, or our friends and family are able to tap in and understand exactly what God's placed on our hearts.
I'm really excited, as I know you are, Tony, because we'll walk through this pathway many years together, and so we know that we're on a countdown of sorts to a glorious meeting with our King. Actually, a series of gatherings, of program scheduled meetings with the bridegroom, King of Heaven. And so, as we hit this day tomorrow evening at sundown, it will begin that 40-day countdown that leads up to walking into his presence, into the magnificence of his glory, into his beauty realm, and beginning to respond to his voice, to practice our courtroom etiquette in the great courts of our King, and to tremble, I'll say a little bit, a lot, tremble a lot at the presence of this majestic King we serve, and then to let him inspect us as we pass underneath this rod, this shepherd's rod, this time every year. That's the first stage of our 3-act drama that will begin and begin to play its way out. So I'm excited. I know you're excited. We have this 40-day countdown starting tomorrow night at sundown with the new moon. We will enter something called the month of Elul. So, Tony, what are your thoughts as we get ready to reach this milestone or landmark?
You know, probably this is one of those times of the year where you and I, it's like we sense the heartbeat of our Father, and we sense His drawing. We feel His breath on our backs, and we feel Him drawing us even closer to Himself. Yeah, we're going to talk about the king in the field concept, but along with that is just this sense of longing to be near Him. There is this desire for intimacy. There's been a lot of preparation. By the time we arrive at Sukkot, there's been a lot of preparation for that day. It's almost, and this is not true, but this is a statement that they make in the world, when you have more past than future, right? It seems like we've gone through so much. We've passed through so many different things in life, and it seems like it took a while to get here, right? And then it's like the wedding. You do all that preparation for maybe an hour, right, of a ceremony. Well, this is not that. We have more future than past. Because we're looking forward to being with our King, our bridegroom King, and spending eternity with Him.
It's really fascinating because this is one of those seasons, Tony, as you know, that is not specifically beginning tomorrow night, at least, this 30-day season, getting ready for the time of Rosh Hashanah, the blowing of the shofar. This 30-day season we're talking about, called Elul, the moon cycle, of the 6th moon cycle of the year, is not specifically ordained in the Torah or in any of the writings of the apostles as being a separate moed or time or appointment. And so we have to basically get the idea that it's a preparation season for something that has so much power and impact in our lives and on the earth that we get excited just in the preparation phase. And, you know, I always like to use the terminology, Tony, that a whole of creation is basically just a passion play. It's a great orchestrated symphonic arrangement that tells the glorious story of a creator and the people and the creation that He's made for His glory, and also for the fulfillment of grand purposes too amazing for us to think about. So this is grand passion play that all of time is built around. Every year is reproducing. And so when you get down to what happens this time of year, according to the traditions, according to our belief, this is the time of year we're at the anniversary of the creation of man. And that's why I think we have this longing in our hearts. We have been in the throes or in the process of life, and now we're at the anniversary of that moment of Genesis 2:7, when the Holy One took Adam into his arms, brought him face to face, and on behalf of all humans that would ever live, the Holy One breathed into Adam's nostrils this breath of life, and made mankind what he is, and instilled that in every portion, every DNA strand that came out of Adam from that point has this breath of the Holy One in it. And from time to time, we need this refreshment. We need this, like an anniversary of a wedding or a marriage. Something happens around the anniversary of your wedding. You know, you begin to really think more about your marriage and about your relationship, and be grateful for the spouse that you have, hopefully, in that process. I know you do, and I do.
Absolutely.
But other people may or may not. But this idea that as the anniversary of that first moment, that special moment of intimacy took place, the breath of the Holy One upon mankind, and the instilling of the neshama, or the Holy Spirit, basically, of resurrection power and of divine character and nature into mankind. No wonder we're hungry, we're longing, we're seeking to have a refreshment, a resuscitation, artificial respiration, as it may be. As we come back to the garden, we come back to the Creator, we come back to the King, and says, here we are. Here we are. We've come back for our divine appointment. We come back to renew that breath and get a fresh outlook on life again, with a fresh inbreathing of your spirit. So that's why I think one reason we're so excited, and it begins to be so powerful for every man. Even just the change in the weather, the change in the atmosphere, we sense there's something new happening. Creation tells us there's something important going on this time of year. And so you see the weather beginning to change. You see a new life is beginning to come forth in the southern hemisphere. We're going to have this time of dormancy begin to appear in the northern hemisphere that we're dealing with. There's a shift in the atmosphere, and hunger is indeed buildings.
You know, when you talk about the shift in the atmosphere, I'll go back to one of the things you alluded to earlier about the celebration of His breath, being breathed into the nostril of man. And there's a responsibility that comes with the breath that He's released into us. There's expectations of that our Father has on our lives. We were created for His good pleasure. Yes. And he is relentless, right? He won't relent, as the song says, until He has it all. His desire and purpose is to bring us back to the fullness of why we were created in the first place. We were created for His pleasure. And so, but as time went, you know, we got off the path. And I like the song in Hosea 6. Come, let us return unto the Lord, right? The things that he has done in our lives have been for this moment. There's been some wounding, it seems like. There's been some places that we've been broken, but it's what the shepherd does when he's teaching and training the sheep. And this is a time where we're being taught to return to Him. We're being taught how to come back to Him. This whole season that we call Teshuvah, that takes place throughout the 29 days of Elul and 10 days into the High Holy Days, we see that as an opportunity to return to the path that He Himself has laid for us. And on that path, there is such a time of rejoicing, a time of restoration, a time of reconciliation, a time of healing, because He's on that. He's with us, right? We don't walk that path alone. He is with us every step of the way. He'll never leave us or forsake us. One of the things that I like about this time, I was talking to you about the fields and the harvest and all that, because there is an agricultural side to this. There's a harvest associated with this season as well. And as we come through this, as we come through the particular seasons of having the sun, the wind, the waters, and all the things that creation does to bring us in this hour, we start looking forward to that harvest. Yeshua said to his Talmudim, the Bible says he drew them closer to himself. And then he gave them authority. I think sometimes we like to put the cart before the horse, right? Is that what they call it in reverse? We want the authority before the drawing near, right? But the Bible says in Matthew 9 and 10, chapter 9 and 10, he called them to himself. He looked at the fields, and as I was walking the other day and looking at the fields, and I was like, oh my goodness, I see why. I actually understood why they had to move to technology, so to speak, and get into instruments and tools of that nature for farming. Because if you try to work those fields with human hands, it would take a massive amount of humans involved. It is not because there is a shortage of humans. You know, a lot of times when we say the harvest is right, but the labor is few, it's not that it's just that the harvest is so great, right? So when I look at this season, I look at it being a time where he draws us closer to himself. He's going to give us a type of authority to be able to work in the fields and to gather the harvest. But before he does that, there needs to be a returning unto him and a closeness to him, so close that you can sense his breath. You can taste the words that are coming out of his mouth. And his influence in our lives is such that when we leave his presence, the authority that he's given us is not misused like some of the terminology for authority that we've used and some of the ways in which we use authority in the human realm, in the fallen, corrupt, contaminated realm. It's a pure sense of influencing and being present and being there for the harvest that he has sent sun, wind, water, and to prepare for this day.
You know, we think about this being a time almost like we really have never been out of his presence. We've really never lost. He's never left us or forsaken us. We've never been abandoned in any way. And yet what has happened instead is that we have in many times lost a level of consciousness of his presence. We have strayed from his mission, from his pathway. We strayed from his persona. We strayed from the intimacy of the best days of our walk with him. And so even though he's never left us nor forsaken us, unfortunately, most of us, during the heat of the summer, the tough times that we go through, the challenges, unfortunately, we've to some level or another abandoned or forsaken him, even if it's only in distraction. Particularly if it's in some form of rebellion, but we hope we're not in that process. But whatever the level of it is, there's this calling coming forth from his holy hill, from his beauty realm, as calling his children, is calling his beloved unto him. And as we say, Elul is said to be an acrostic, for Ani Ladodi Vadodi Li. Sorry about the sirens here, but the Ani Ladodi, I am for, or I am unto, or I am going to my beloved. I am rushing to him, and my beloved is rushing to me. And there's this, they used to have I don't know, it was a commercial or something on television where they had these people, this couple, and they saw each other in a field. And I don't remember the commercial or not. I don't even know what it was for, but in the commercial, they would see each other at a distance, and they would begin to run at full speed and to one another's arms, and they would find each other in the field, and they would embrace, and the man would just grab the woman and hug her and pull her and turn her around and around in circles in this warmth of embrace of long lost affection, long lost, and that's really when we say the king is in the field. We say Elul is this season when he's out there and he's calling to us. And we're hearing his voice, maybe so quietly we don't know what it is, feeling this draw, feeling this pull to whatever level we have abandoned him, whatever level we have forsaken him, whatever level we've been distracted away into other pursuits or other concepts. We feel this crying, I've got to go back. I've got to find him in the field. I've got to find my lover, my beloved. Where has he gone? He hasn't gone anywhere. We have. And so this is this time of getting ready and looking for him in the field. Now, there's a historical or biblical Torah basis, obviously, for this idea of finding the Holy One in the field. And the first time that's really mentioned is in Genesis chapter 24. And the issue then becomes Yitzhak, and Isaac, as he's called by most people in the Western world. And he's a single, well over the age of marriage, and his father Abraham's getting old, and Sarah has passed away, and you know the story. And what happens is that Abraham sends his servant to the house of Laban up in Haran, Padan Aram. And they bring back, he basically makes a contract and brings back Rebecca to be the wife of Yitzhak. And Yitzhak has never met Rebecca, and Rebecca's never met Yitzhak. But the pull, the draw of the Holy One to them, or for them, to put them together is very strong. And so on the way back from Padan Aram to meet Yitzhak and finish this marriage, here is the servant of Abraham, and this entourage that has Rivka on a camel, on these camels with all the goods they brought back to set up life involved in. As they're passing down towards the place where they're going to live, Rivka sees a man out in the fields meditating, praying, suaking in Hebrew, focusing on interacting as he walks through the fields with his creator. And of course, it's Isaac, it's Yitzhak. And she sees him, and she's so drawn to him that she falls off her camel, it actually says in the Torah. And then they meet, they greet, and then it says that he loved her, and they fell in love. And this idea of meeting the king in the field is drawn largely off of that story, and off of that testimony of the patriarchs, that this is a season of the year, this is a special time of favor, when the king is out waiting for his beloved to come. And the beloved is drawn into the field to him to run to his side and be reunited. So what are your thoughts as each one of us individually and all the people collectively feel this drawing? What can we expect as we get closer to the day?
Yeah, so I think about the times where at Regions is what it was called in some parts of Biblical Lifestyle Center time, when myself, John Michael, some of the others, we would be singing, and around this time you would sense a heaviness in terms of his presence on the music, on the psalms. And I remember some of the lyrics of some of the songs that were birthed in that time. One of them was, I'll build you a holy place, right? A holy habitation so that you can dwell. There was this cry of our hearts to have the Holy One inhabit us, dwell with us, that we would sense his presence, and that we would build something that he could come and enjoy with us. And so, and then there was another song that we used to sing, and all these songs to me were just so instrumental in helping with the focus and the attention that we wanted to give him. But we would sing songs about how thirsty we were for him, how he was the air we breathe, and all those things. And there was a longing and a cry in our hearts, a desperation, actually, a desperate cry in our hearts for him. And it seems like the more we sang those songs, it seems I remember times where it seems like he came into that experience, or he showed himself in that experience. He was already there, but he showed himself in that experience. and it just raptured me in a way. I wasn't able to stay connected to the human realm at that point. I was with him someplace, and I'm seeing, I'm listening, I'm talking, and I'm following him. But the story of the Song of Solomon was a lot of time was thematic in that process. We would just hear over and over again songs and words and lyrics and things that came out of that. A garden enclosed, all these lyrics would come, but they were so precious to us because they helped us to navigate through that process and to go with him. And that was the other thing, is that I think sometimes we get so distracted with what's going on around us that we miss those opportunities to just go with him, right? Just follow him. So we find ourselves like the Shulamite, as he is coming and he's peeping through the lattice, and he's been saying things to us. He's been describing the beauty that we have, that we possess. He shows us ourselves in a light that we possibly never thought about ourselves. And he describes us in such beauty, such beautiful ways and beautiful language, that we're just drawn to him. We're taken, our breath is taken away by the way he describes us. These are some of the things you can expect during this time. Yes, he addressed the darkness, right? He addressed the way that we see ourselves, the blackness, the darkness, the being entrapped in all of these other emotions, and being handled and mishandled by all the things that we encounter through our lives. But he comes and he says things to us that just destroys the power and the influence of those things. And we find ourselves hopelessly following after him, wanting and longing to be with him and wanting to hold on to him for as long as we possibly. How abandoned will you let me be?
Yes.
Those types of lyrics are coming out of seasons like this, and I can just remember and that's why I look so forward to these times, because every time this season have cycled around, he's always done something just marvelous in our eyes, things that we couldn't do ourselves. We couldn't create this environment ourselves. We could not manufacture this. This couldn't come through systems and all that. We know, and every year we know it's him. The shofar blast is another really exciting time for me, is during Yom Teruah to hear the sounds of the shofar, right? Going off in our hearing every day of Elul. We're listening. We wake up and there is an awareness, there is an alert, there is an alarm, so to speak, that goes off in us. But it's not an alarm that causes us to be afraid, or it's not one that causes anxiety or panic. It's an alarm, it's an awakening, it's an awareness that he's near, right? We are awakened to the fact that he's always been where he is. But now we become more aware that he's here. And those are the things that I look forward to during this time of Elul.
I think we have come to an understanding, and hopefully other people will be able to get this too, that when we say these phrases like, this is the season when the king is in the field and he's more accessible to us than other times, it really has more to do with us than it does him. It is a matter of us realizing our desperate need for a closer walk, a closer encounter, a fresh awakening of our love relationship with him. And so it's about the closest, him being in the field. He's always in the field. We're in the field looking for him now. I think that makes a lot of difference. One thing I always encourage people to do as we get ready for this season, and again, since it starts tomorrow night, I wanted you and I to get together, even though we're physically distant, by about 200 miles or whatever it may be. I wanted us to get together and be able to hopefully encourage people who are maybe walking through this for the first time, or maybe for the second, third, fifth, 20th time, 50th time, it doesn't matter, to get energized, to get excited, to get empowered, to let their heart respond. Don't think you're strange or weird. This is the part of mankind responding to his creator, the one who loves him most, the one who designed him, the one who knows his needs. And so the big issue is we're looking forward for 40 days to Yom Kippur, to the day when we will rehearse our death. We will report, we will give an account, and he knows this is going to happen. That we're going to have to give an account, at least emotionally and intellectually, if not dying, us actually physically dying. But when we fast on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, it is as if we go into a state of mini death. And that particular stage, we will appear before him, and we will be naked and bare, in a sense, before him. And all of our deeds and all of our thoughts and all of our behaviors and all of our attitudes and addictions and all the things that we have done or been a part of will be very real to all of us. And so he knows it, and so that's why he wants us to call us in advance. He wants to give us a cheat sheet. He wants to get with us and clear some of these issues up before that time, so that when we stand together, we stand with Yeshua before him, and he looks at us and says, yes, you did those things. That was you. That's not the new you. That's not who you are now that you stand before me in this day. You are new. You were born afresh. You were born anew, born again, as it would be in the theological sense. You are a new creation in me, and so those things I will not be held against you. Matter of fact, they are separate from you. They are not part of your identity, and therefore we're made ready by this 40-day season. Well, every time you know there's a countdown coming, like when you get ready to blast off on a spaceship, I physically haven't done that, but I've seen it on television. You have a checklist, right? You have a certain checklist, and T-minus so-and-so, you check this, and T-minus so-and-so, you check that. Well, here's where we are. We got some things to be thinking about, to be checking off as we get closer and closer to the actual time of our appearance before the Holy One. And I've got this list out. I want to talk with you about some of them, and then we'll probably have to quit for the day and move on to something else. But here's the first thing I've got as a checklist item. Are we at where we are right now? Are we spiritually awake, or are we spiritually asleep or drunk, as it were, upon the serpent's poison, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil potion that has been inflicted upon us? Are we awake? Now, to me, the first question is, are we awake? Means, are we embracing and participating in a living, breathing, ongoing, vivacious, vibrant revelation stream? Are we at a place where we are receiving daily downloads, where we are flowing in this great movement of the Holy One? That's what I call awake. I'm most awake when this revelation stream is flowing. Teachers, those who do teaching, we obviously know this. I'd much rather teach. I don't ever want to teach when I'm not in a revelation stream, when it's not flowing like that. But this doesn't just depend on being a teacher. The question is to be asked, before we get into the 40 days in preparation for Yom Kippur, the 29 days of Elul, before we go too deep in this, the first question is, are we even awake? Has our spirit been awakened yet? Or are we still sleeping under the influence of some serpent potion or poison or flesh response? So Tony, what are the things that can happen to us in your mind? What have you experienced, or what do you know of happening that people could be on the watch out for to show signs of being awake, hopefully where we want to be, ready to receive revelation stream and flow, or B, unfortunately, on the other side of the equation, being in this state of stupor or sleep, or even some kind of drunkenness on the things of the world? What is your experience, and what would you caution people or tell people?
Well, you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about don't feel that it's strange that you're starting to come into this way of thinking and functioning around this season. It's actually his influence on you. And I would say, you know, if you're having trouble going with him, right, flowing with him and answering that call. I have friends that have called me lately, probably, and said, I feel that I'm supposed to be in prayer right now. And they're taking sabbaticals and they're getting away, and they're spending time with him. They're wanting to hear his voice. They're wanting to clear their minds of a lot of the other voices that's been speaking and all these types of things. That means that you're on cue, right? You're hearing, you're sensing his presence, and you're being guided by his wisdom and influence. But the other side of that is being distracted with a lot of the things that are going on in your present and current situation. And just like we hear the people of God hear his voice calling and drawing, there are other voices too that are intensified during this season. There are other things that go on in our world that becomes more intense in this season. The volume increases, the impact increases. And if you're not prayerful, and if you're not staying in meditation, then the tendency to drift with those things will happen. You're going to see a lot of things happening on the political front. You're going to see a lot of things happening in your community. You're going to see a lot of things happening nationally. You're going to hear a lot of voices. You're going to hear a lot of stuff. And so if you're not prayerful, and if you're not in meditation, and if you're not, you know, that's why I love the parshas, is because the parshas are so instrumental in bringing us into this season correctly, appropriately. You know, we were just told that we need to have a new vision, right? We need to be seeing differently than what we've been seeing. We need eyes to see. And that was very important. That's important right now for the season that we're headed into. What do you see? If you're not seeing according to the word of God, if you're not seeing according to the Torah, the parshas, the things that he's revealing, then you could be seeing something that's not really accurate, right? You could be having delusions, right? You could be seeing things that's not true to what God is actually saying and or doing. The other thing is, you know, we're about to be sent out, right? We have, well, first we have to show them the judges, and then we're going to be sent out, right? And so, are we ready to be sent? If you don't have a vision, we talked a lot about Ray. If you don't have a vision, if you don't see, I like the way Moses took them through that, because it was an eye-opening experience. What have I been looking at? How do I see the world around me? So our worldview is being changed right now. If your worldview is still closely associated and similar to that of the culture around you, and that is a telltale sign that you may not be awake.
Very, very good. Good point. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do while we're at this time together is to kind of go out of this week's Haftarah, which is the fourth Haftarah of consolation, right at the end of Isaiah 51 and the beginning of 52. He does something twice. The prophet does something twice. And he repeats a word twice, and then he comes back to the next verse and repeats the word twice, and he comes back once again and repeats the same word twice. And the word is this: awake, awake, awake Jerusalem, awake, O city of Zion, awake, awake. Dust off the dust, shake off the dust, O Zion, awake, come alive, come awake, O my people, come awake. Awake, awake, and over again. And I hope as I spoke that, and as that there's a prophetic release into the spirits of all those who will listen to that the voice of the creator of the universe is much more powerful than mine and much more drawing than mine. And that cry is, come awake, my child, come awake, my beloved, come awake, 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 shake off the dust, put on your finest garments. We're going to have a time together, and I want you to be ready. The bride to make herself ready. Awake, awake. Now, there's another inquiry that I'd like to kind of ask in this regard, and that is, it's kind of a checklist. Are we on mission? Or are we off on a side journey? Are we on trajectory? Are we on the correct trajectory to hit the target? Or are we going to have to hope for a lot of wind push to get us there in this process? Or are we going to miss the target completely the way we're going, the road we're on, the pathway that we're on right now? Are we getting close to the target, or are we going to have some serious course correction over the course of these 40 days and on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, on the days of awe? Is there a major, unpleasant, uncomfortable course correction going to be necessary? Or can we now even begin to make those in-flight corrections? So what are some of the things that are striking you at that particular stage about this inquiry, this checklist matter about are we on trajectory? Are we on course? Are we on time? Are we headed for the target or not?
You know, there are different norths on the compass, right?
Right.
They're not all true north, right? You can think that you're headed true north and easily be headed magnetic north or some other direction, and it's just a little off, right? But it's still off. It's
Once
still
you
off
start, then you go further, and it gets further and further off.
The further you go in that direction, I think. When we follow paths, even if they have, if we use scripture to support the path that we're on, if we follow different paths out of the wrong spirit, right, then we're destined to follow those paths that lead us into magnetic north and some of those other directions. What troubles me sometimes, and I pray about these things, is when we have believers, and I hear this a lot, especially now, when we have believers that are operating or functioning from a place of offense, right? Somehow they've become offended at God. And so when God is calling us to himself, there is an offense in us that won't allow us to answer that call. How did that offense take place? Where did it come from? It could come from so many different things that could happen in our lives. Regardless of that, offense can cause us to start believing a lie, right? And start our process or path off of the path that he has laid for us. And I think what we're seeing a lot now is, and I'm seeing a lot of reconciliation take place. I'm seeing people who were operating and functioning from a place of offense come to the fountain of life and drink of his life, drink of his influence. And I'm starting to see a change in the paradigm of those who were functioning from this place of offense. I'm even starting to see some people who were offended at churches, religious groups, religious systems, all that, and got on the Torah, got on the Hebrew, on the Jewish roots, the Hebraic roots, and decided that that's where they wanted to be. But they were walking in such offense that it wasn't a beautiful walk. It wasn't a joyful walk. It was filled with anger and frustration and strife. So I'm seeing a healing take place right now, and a restoring of the love of God to these individuals, to where families are now starting to experience a type or a degree of reconciliation. I think there's more reconciliation to come, but I'm starting to see the very beginning stages of a major reconciliation taking place, where the offense in our lives are being dealt with.
Very, very excellent. I consider there are some litmus tests of trajectory, and I'll just call it that, litmus test of trajectory. Things that we can check ourselves, gauges that we can measure our own status. Are we on course? Are we on mission? Are we on trajectory? And one of those facets is, does our heart burn and yearn for our King? Is there this passionate fire burning within us? You've referenced it earlier with regard to some of the songs, the Song of Solomon. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for you. There's so many more, that we could go through this process. But first litmus test of whether we're on course is our heart burning with passion for our King? And that is so critical that we should know. If we're feeling a little lukewarm, or if we're feeling a little hard-hearted, a little crusty, if our conversation is more about current events or more about what's wrong in the world or what's wrong in the church or what's wrong with this movement or that movement or this political party or that political party or ideology, whatever, if we're on that realm, what has happened is we failed the litmus test. And this is the Holy One trying to help you. You've lost your first love. You've lost your first love. You're not passionate anymore. You never close your eyes anymore. When I kiss your lips, the righteous brothers would have said it. You've lost that loving feeling. So this first litmus test, a challenge to everyone out there who may be watching or listening, challenge to me, challenge to you, Tony, challenge to our friends and our family is, do you love him? Or is your heart burning with excitement and enthusiasm for him? Do you hunger to serve him, to worship him, to honor him? I'm not talking about the formulas. I'm not talking about the patterns. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about individual heartfelt surrender to the goodness and the majesty of who he is. This is litmus test number one. Are you still in love? Or have you fallen out of love or begin to take his love for granted in this process? Any thoughts on that, Tony?
Yeah. So when we think about that litmus test, are we in love with him? Do we burn for him? He says one way you know that you love him is when you love the brother, when you can love someone else. If we're still walking in bitterness toward individuals, if we're still not willing to forgive people, if we're still, as you say, pointing out and criticizing and being critical of others, then we're not ready to love them, which is a sign that we're not burning in love with him. He hasn't captured our hearts yet, because when he does, the world looks different, right? Everyone in your world looks different.
And that goes on. That is kind of the litmus test 1A. Litmus or 1B. Litmus test 1A is, does your heart yearn for him? And then the test of that is, do you love your fellow man? Do you love those who are unlovable? Do you love those who have offended you? Are you able to see beyond the current state of things and to see through his eyes of love for that person? So that's perfect that you would say that. Now, the other issue of that is, another litmus test is, do you love his word more than you love the purpose for which he gave the word? In other words, do you love the Torah? Do you love the Brit Hadashah? Do you love the prophets? Do you love the reading? Do you love the study? Do you love the teaching more than you love the mission? What's the mission? To redeem mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, every tongue and tribe and ethnicity and every culture and every nation. And to do that bloodline by bloodline, person by person, household by household, and then to restore creation to its intended state. And creation meaning every sphere of influence you touch, geographically, technologically, every sphere of influence, to restore shalom, to restore fruitfulness, to awaken potential in those areas. This is that issue. Or do you just love to talk about his words? And that becomes doctrines. It becomes theological points and positions and arguments and debates. He says, is that what you're in this for? Or are you in this for the mission? Are you in this for the divine purpose and the plan? Are you in this for the play? Are you in this for the fourth quarter? Are you in this for the final countdown? Are you in this for the end game? Are you in this for the final goalpost that we cross in this process? That's our next challenge. The litmus test is it just about liking his word and having the religious world be an important thing in your life? Or is this really about the mission? And there's another test that goes with that, and I'll let you think about this and maybe make your comments about all of it together, is that you know whether you are interested in the mission versus just the word, as far as how you feel and how you act and how you talk about and toward the 5 special litmus groups of Torah. How do you think? How do you talk toward? How do you talk about? How do you act toward the widow, toward the fatherless, toward the foreigners, toward the poor in your community that you actually know? I'm not talking about in theory, not some abstract group of people out there.
Right.
I mean, real people in your neighborhood, or real people at your workplace, or real people in your community that you know, that you see. Do you care for them? Are you engaged, actively participating in them? Because no matter what you think, if you're not doing that now, then you're more concerned about the religious form and the word than you are about the mission and about the purpose and about the end game of the Holy One. So it's a gut check. It's just part of one of those deeper litmus test processes. And what kind of are your thoughts or your comments about that issue that we have to go through on our checklist?
Yeah, so I love this checklist. I've heard you talk about this before, and some, of course, whenever you talk about it, you always there's things that comes out that's different than the last time. But I love this process because it's very practical, right? You can see yourself doing these things and checking and making sure that you're not off somewhere doing and being a part of something that you shouldn't be. Always right around this time, I'm always encouraging those friends of mine that are in the ministry or whatever they may be doing. Hey, don't miss this, right? I'm always, my heart is don't miss this. When you love God and you love, which is the result of loving God, and you love one another, you want to see people benefiting or being a part of what God's called them to be and being who God's called them to be. You want them in that place where they're experiencing the good pleasure of the Lord. The joy of the Lord is their strength. And so when you say that and you look at these litmus tests, you start thinking about your own process and your own journey. I think a lot about my own process and my own journey and how the Lord speaks to me. I remember when we was talking about the revelation streams, and one of them was creation. And how God speaks to us through creation. And so probably, I live out here in the country now, and there's not a lot to do, a lot to see. It is, but I've been taught and programmed to think that this is not living, right?
Yeah.
And so living out here, I'm learning to live again, but to live in harmony with creation. Right. And that's not something that I've been used to doing, because in the city, you don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. It's artificial. So I'm out here probably, and I'm not used to crickets being in the house. Right. I'm just not used to that. I'm not used to crickets getting in the house. Well, crickets get in the house. There's no way for us to keep them out. Right. And so our first night, there was a cricket, and he was doing his thing, singing whatever he's doing. And it sounded like he was calling to other crickets, right? And for a while, he didn't hear any other crickets. It's just him. And he was in the house, so he was loud. It was like everything was amplified in terms of volume. And then all of a sudden, you start hearing another cricket, and it seems like that cricket started singing with this cricket. All right, so
invited their friends over, yeah.
Invited their friends over, and I'm trying to sleep, and all those, and then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done with the cricket spot. I get up, I'm trying to hunt this thing down, right? I'm moving furniture around, I move the stove, and I can't find the cricket, right? And so I ended up almost injuring myself trying to find and war against this cricket. And so I went back to bed, and I said, okay, hold on a second, I missed something. What are you trying to teach me, Lord, from the cricket in the house? And these are some of the lessons that I learned. The cricket was doing what he does, what he was created to do, right? And my flesh was agitated because creation was responding to God the way it is supposed to respond. But because my flesh is experiencing something that disconnects me from creation, I became agitated even with God's creation. It was singing. It was doing what it does. It was actually calling me into alignment, into a harmonious reaction to it. But instead, my flesh became agitated, and I immediately wanted to attack the cricket. This is where I do the litmus test on myself. How am I responding to creation? Has it become something that agitates me to the degree that I can no longer focus on his Torah, on his word, on his presence, on his love, on the joy, on being thankful for all the things he gave? Have I become so distracted and agitated with what's going on in creation because of my disattachment from it that I can no longer follow the path that he's called me to? Or am I in a place where I'm learning from creation, hearing creation, and being called into manifestation as sons of God? So it's lessons within creation that I think we should also be receiving during this time.
Excellent. And I'm gonna use one more litmus test. I actually have several of them that I've written down and using on myself as I get this 40-day checklist going. But I'll mention one more. And the terminology that I use will probably sound religious to some folks. It's not going to be what you think it is. So I'll warn you in advance that when I use the phrase to describe this litmus test, I'm not thinking what you're probably thinking about if you've been in religious circles all your life. And the word is the stewardship test, the litmus test of stewardship. Now, I know in the religious world that has a connotation and a meaning, and immediately people get defensive. They start grabbing their wallets. I'm not talking about any of that. The stewardship I'm talking about are the more precious gifts that our bridegroom king has entrusted to us to carry and disperse in the world and spread throughout the world. I'm talking particularly about the first one being shalom. His precious shalom, as we've said this before, but Yeshua looked at his disciples across the upper room table, and he said, "My shalom I give to you." It is not like the shalom, not like the peace of the world is what I'm giving to you. And this precious gift is something that we don't just receive and indulge and enjoy like a nice glass of wine. It's just for us, or a piece of bread. This is something that we're supposed to take into ourselves, and then exude, and then let it nurture and grow and spread that peace and shed that peace wherever we go. In other words, when we enter a home, what are we supposed to say? We're supposed to give it our shalom. We're supposed to release our shalom over it. Any place we go, any city we go into, any place we visit, we're supposed to leave it with shalom. We're to be peacemakers, shalom builders, asa'ers would be the Hebrew phrase, shalom builders, makers, wherever we go. So the litmus test, first litmus test of stewardship is, how are you doing with the shalom gift? Because if you're anxious, if you're worried, if you're angry, if you're offended, if you're distraught, if you are negative, if you are depressed, it tells us something. It should tell you, it's your litmus test is coming back with a big flaming arrow saying, danger zone, you've lost your shalom. You're not responding. So test number one of the litmus of stewardship. Now I throw out to everyone who's watching, I encourage you to be paying attention to your shalom, the shalom that Yeshua gave you. Do you still have it? Do you still have it in great quantity? Do you still have it growing and nurturing? Are you able to share that shalom in every situation that you face? Not just the situations in which everybody else has got shalom, not just in religious connotations, but in the midst of conflict, in the midst of trial, in the midst of argumentativeness, and even the divisive things that are going on in the world right now. Are you able to hold on to your shalom, first of all? And second of all, are you able to communicate and spread that shalom in the world? So this is litmus test of stewardship number one. I'll just quickly go into another one is joy. We have We have joy in the presence of the Holy One. Everything about the presence of the Holy One brings us into this state of joy. So as we get ready to do this testing of ourselves, we check this our heart level. Are we vessels of joy? Is that what comes across in our conversations with people? Do they say, well, why are you, something's with you? You got this glow, you got this joy. You don't seem to be shaken by what's going on around you. Don't you know? Haven't you heard? Haven't you heard the bad news of what's going on in the world? And why are you not angry? Why are you not upset? Why are you not worried? Why are you not stressed? This is the second test of the stewardship litmus, is that do you still have your joy? And are you a vessel, a communicator of joy? Are you making joy contagious? Are people catching your joy in this process? And then there are others that we could mention. I'll just mention emunah, the idea of faithfulness, the idea of understanding God consciousness, as I like to call it. People say faith, but it's such a different, they think of that in terms of mental or intellectual belief, or even trust. It's beyond all that. It is an understanding that God is all. He created all. Everything is about him. Everything is for him. He is working in all things. In all things, God works to bring good for those who love him, who are called according to his purposes. This sense of assurance, this calm assurance that whatever's happening in the world, whoever caused it, whatever it looks like is going on, God is what's really happening, and God is really working this and all other things together for good for those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. That sense of confident assurance. How are you doing stewarding it? How are we doing it? Are we communicating that? Is that what people get whenever they're with us? They sense, take a deep breath, it's going to be all right. It's going to be not only all right, it's going to be marvelously good, because no matter what men may do, no matter what men may plot or plan, the Holy One sits in the heavens and he laughs. You know, why do the nations rage and the peoples imagine a vain thing? Why is this? Because the Holy One knows he is going to bring forth good. The end game will be accomplished. The restoration of all things will take place, making of tikkun for bloodlines, making of restoration and healing in our bloodlines and our households and our families will take place. The earth will be restored to Edenic beauty, fruitfulness, and shalom and harmonious interaction. Do we have that emunah? How are we doing stewarding the emunah, the idea, the God consciousness, the awareness that all is going to be okay? Can we look at our children and with all integrity and all honesty and all believability and credibility, because the way we live, say, honey, don't worry, it's all gonna be all right? That's a major litmus test that we need to go through at this stage. Tony, what are your thoughts on these different forms of the litmus test that I just mentioned? Peace, joy, and emunah.
You started with this being stewardship, right? This is what we're doing, and even though this is a very limited aspect of stewardship, a part of stewardship is management.
Yes.
And so when I look at joy, shalom, emunah, and you have others, these are tools, just like Israel was given the land, just like they were given children, just like they were given all these things were tools because of the mission, right? They would need these tools to accomplish the mission of the Brit, right? And so this was all because of the Brit. It was all because of the covenant that he gave them these tools. Why have he given us his shalom?
Yes.
Why has he given us his joy? Why has he given us emunah? These are all tools that we are required to, we will need these if we're going to accomplish or finish the mission, fight a good faith, finish our course. This is what we're going to need. These are the tools we'll need to be stewards.
And they become the antidote for the anti-Messiah, for the anti-Christ, for the lawless of the world. These are the antidote. It's just not, lawless don't just need the law. They need the shalom and the simcha, the joy and the faithfulness, the steadfastness of trust that comes with emunah, with the Torah, to make this thing really work. And this is the antidote for the serpent's venom and for the Antichrist hate and angst. So yes, that's an important thing to steward at this particular stage. One of our litmus tests is, how good are we doing at stewarding these things? You remember all these parables that Yeshua, the master, told. Seemed like everyone, a king left some of his servants with things, with talents, with land to take care of, with whatever. But he went away knowing he was going to come back, and letting them know he was going to return to his land or to his people. And he was going at that time to require an accounting of what they had done with the talents, or with the land, or with the crops, or whatever he had entrusted the folks. It goes over and over again in Yeshua's kingdom parables. That's what this kingdom is all about. And so as we get ready for this countdown to this grand reunion and reconciliation, restoration of our relationship with our bridegroom king, he wants us to tell us in advance, these are the things you got to work on. I'm giving you the crib sheet. Before the exam, these are the things you need to work on and study and begin to work toward, and let me tenderize your heart and begin to open up your mind. Get back in the revelation stream. Get back in this place. And then the final litmus test is, how are we doing on the disciplines? And this is a critical factor as far as where we are, because this is our methodology to get back in. We could obviously hope that lightning would strike, that we just suddenly turn the corner and, oh, there he is. And wow, we didn't have to do anything. And he just showed up and he fixed us, and he healed us, and he did all these things. And Lord, I hope that happens for so many people. I hope it happens for me. But, realistically speaking, most of us have to co-labor and cooperate. And we need to be doing our part as well. And so these issue of the disciplines, the fourth stewardship is, how are you doing with the disciplines? How are you doing with prayer? How are you doing in conversation, keeping the conversation alive and active with the Holy One? Are you more adept at posting things on social media than you are about keeping the conversation rolling with the Creator? Are you more adept about listening to the broadcast news or to the latest gossip than you are about keeping this conversation? Where's your priority in regard to communication? That's litmus test number one. The same issue. Are you in the Torah? Are you in the Bible? Are you walking according to the protocols, the patterns? Are you in the parshas? Are you drawing not just the peshat, the surface stuff out of it, but are you sensing the energy and the power coming off of the Torah, of the parsha of the week, of the haftarah of the week, of the Brit Hadashah reading, or even of the Amidah, of the Shemona Esrei prayer that we study, that meditate on each week? Are these things energizing you and empowering you? Are you working through these different disciplines? And then the discipline of loving your family, teaching these things to your children, if you have them, to those who are around. That's one of the disciplines of the covenant, is that we will teach these things faithfully to our children. Speak of them as we sit in our home. Speak of them as you sit in your home. And as you walk by the way, when you lie down, your timing of your sequence of going to bed, you're right when you rise up, and to make them as a sign upon your hands, where everything you touch through the filter and with the passion of the Torah's descriptions of life, and you look at everything, bind them as a sign before your eyes, like about frontlets, where it changes your vision, because you look at everything through the lens of what the Torah says about it and its purpose and the reason for which it's there, and what the potential might be if it was turned into the right way, the right pathway, the right trajectory, the right mission. So these are the things now as the disciplines, and I'll leave that on my end of it as trying to awaken people or encourage people, or even counsel everyone, as to how to make the most of this 40-day period, how to maximize this year's portion of drawing close to our King and meeting him in the field. Here's the assurance I've got. I know you would share this, Tony. Is this: if we will do even one step worth of our part, he will meet us in the field. It will be that picture of, we see each other from a distance, and we're immediately drawn to drop everything and run and meet together in that field and embrace and begin to flow together in perfect harmony and unity, saying, we're home now. We're home now.
Yeah.
We're healed now. We're welcome in the kingdom now. We're ready to go and do your will, O our King. Final thoughts, Tony, before we have to go.
A couple of songs, and I would ask that whoever listening to this, just go back over this. Papa B often says this in our Torah talks, because sometimes we say so many things. God drops so many nuggets in our lives that it's worth going back over and listening to. I would say there's a couple of songs that I will leave us with. One is "Come, Let Us Return unto the Lord." Let us return. And then secondly, I remember Fred Hammond did this song, and we began to sing some of the lyrics of it in some of our psalmist releases at Regions. I see him standing there for me. I'm running back to you. I see you standing there for me, and your arms are open wide. Yeah. That's the image of the Father I have. Not someone ready to beat up on us, not someone ready to cripple us or to hurt us or to damage us. But I see someone there saying, with his arms open wide, saying, if you're running back to me, my arms are wide open and I'm right here for you. Those are the things I would like to leave with our group.
Wow, so much, so rich, and so thankful. Tony, thank you for joining me tonight. As we get ready, we can't be there physically together in person, but we're still together in spirit. And so, thank you for sharing and helping the people in this process. For all those who are watching and may watch in the future, we just bless you. Have a wonderful month of Elul, moon cycle of Elul. Have a wonderful preparation time for these high holy days, for your divine encounters, life-changing, transformative encounters with your Creator, with your bridegroom King, with the lover of your soul. May you have a wonderful preparation for that. And may the Holy One bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you, oh yes. And may he renew and refresh your shalom, your joy, your emunah, your sense of hope, your sense of well-being, and your testimony of his goodness. Shalom for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.